So welcome everyone to the first panel session that's organized by the Biology Department's DEI Council, along with the Society of Underrepresented Biologists and Bioengineers. And today we have 7 wonderful grad students who have volunteered to share some things with us about their grad school experience, as well as offer some advice on applying to grad school. So before we start, I just wanted to ask everyone to introduce themselves and say what year they are in grad school and what grad program and lab they're in. So let's start with Caesar.
Hi, I'm Cesar. I'm in the biology department here at MIT, and I'm a second year, and I'm in Thomas Schwartz's lab.
Cool. Bertina?
Yeah, hi, Bertina. I am a fourth year in the biology department as well, and I work in Joy Davis lab.
Christina?
Hi, I'm Tina. I'm a second year graduate student in the biology department, and I'm in Kristen Knaus's lab.
Quadwell?
Hey guys, my name is Kojo. I'm a fifth year MD PhD student and doing my PhD in the biology department in Peter Radine's lab, defending in a couple of months.
Giselle?
Hi everyone, my name is Giselle. I'm a second year in the biology department as well, and I'm also in the Radine lab with Kojo.
Francesca?
Hi everyone, I'm Francesca. I am actually a grad student in the chemistry department, and I'm a fourth year in the Drennan lab.
And Sheena?
Hey everyone, I'm Sheena. I'm also in the Drennan lab with Francesca, and I'm a fourth year in the biology department.
Cool, thank you. So now Lily will start off with some questions that we have prepared for you guys. And in the meantime, if anyone in the audience has any questions for anyone, feel free to put it in the Q&A and we'll get to them at the end.
Yeah, so first question is going to be, why did you choose to go to grad school? Did you consider any other options, like medical school or not going? And then what are you planning to do after grad school? And then whoever wants to start or can go ahead and start.
I'll go ahead. So I did consider doing MD PhD, but then I realized I don't like sick people, being around them, touching them. So that was definitely a quick no for why I should not go to medical school. And I also I love research. My favorite times in undergrad was the summers where I got to be there full time. And kind of, I live for those eureka moments where you finally figure out the answer to the question you've been asking for years. And so I kind of chase that high. So research was definitely the path for me. And that's why I chose to go to graduate school. And for the future, I plan to be a professor at a top tier research institute.
I can go next because I also considered medical school, but I was very comfortable working with sick patients, and I was always volunteering in a hospital since I was 14 years old through high school, and in undergrad is when I got more experience in a lab, and as time went on, I just became very comfortable in the lab, and that was essentially the place that I spent the most time in during undergrad. And then after that, I wasn't so certain on medical school anymore, and so I took time off and worked as a technician in a lab at a medical school actually. So I got to work full time in the lab, and then after I would shadow physicians, and then I was able to compare both lifestyles and just trajectories side by side. And I really decided that I what I enjoyed working on more and what I enjoyed learning about more was about chemistry and molecular mechanisms and just like all of these amazing things about molecular biology. And I excluded MD PhD because I didn't want to learn about pathology and I just wanted to go into research. And um, yeah, that was me. I like more, I guess, fundamental, non-applied science, and I'd like to continue with that.
Yeah, I don't mind sharing next. I think for me, maybe similar to what like Tina and Cesar kind of mentioned, I went to University of Maryland, Baltimore County, UMBC, and I had really formative experiences there as an undergraduate as part of like a scholarship program for minority students interested in research careers. And so I didn't know that I was going to be interested in research or like working in laboratories but I really enjoyed the experiences I did had. I worked in a lab for a couple of years at University of Maryland School of Medicine, and I like loved picking up the pipette, like loved doing experiments. I just thought it was cool that you could learn how the world worked if you designed experiments really well. And then coming up to Boston for a couple of summers and just meeting like faculty members or just the communities of people who are interested in science, I found was pretty formative. And so I'd heard about like MD PhD programs and PhD programs, wasn't quite sure what kind of things would be the best fit, but I knew I wanted to like have a lot of time to work on like projects since I knew I wanted to do my PhD. And it wasn't until maybe halfway through college or the last year and a half or so that I decided to do some like shadowing experiences while working in the lab. And I just really enjoyed both like studying something in the laboratory and then learning, at least as an undergraduate, a little bit of what caring for people who are suffering from those illnesses kind of looked like. And so I found that formative, and just talking to other faculty members who'd also done similar types of training, I was like, oh, I think I want to do the kind of jobs that, at least at the time, that they were doing. And so I think just having those kind of experiences in undergrad, probably similar to what Tina and Cesar mentioned, were pretty formative for me.
I can go next. So I did not consider going to medical school when I first came to undergrad. And I actually attended a community college because I couldn't afford to attend a traditional four-year institution. And one of the big reasons for me to go to graduate school, honestly, was that I could get paid to continue my education. And another reason is I joined some NSF funded programs at my community college, and that exposed me to different research opportunities. And I started working in a lab and thought being a scientist was the coolest thing ever. And so being able to get paid and also continue doing research, making discoveries was very inspiring and something that I wanted to continue doing. So that was my reason for going to graduate school. In the future, I'm still deciding what I want to do, but I'm leaning towards academia and being a professor in biology or biochemistry.
Yeah, I can share next. Yeah, I think like the story is sort of like similar to other people. Yeah, so initially I did think about medical school, but that was until I started working in a lab at my home institution. And then I did a few summer research experience, and they were just like so amazing and like so worthwhile. I met so many new people from all different background, which I don't know, made me love science even more because I could be exposed to so many great people as well as doing like something that was so amazing. And yeah, and so from that point on, I definitely thought that grad school was the way forward for me. And yeah, and I definitely think that I would, I guess for now, I would like to stick to the academia route.
So I guess I'll go ahead and I'll add to the train of people who at one point considered medical school and then ultimately decided against it. So I I was pretty set on being MD PhD from the moment I kind of enrolled in undergrad and kind of like was aware of the fact, I guess my first exposure to biological research was through medicine, through the lens of medical school. And then through taking classes in undergrad, I was exposed to just like more fundamental research. And I figured, oh, MD PhD is perfect. They'll let me combine both of them. I'll be able to do both. And I was also a part of a minority research program, the McNair program at my institution, and they kind of funded me as I was doing a lot of research and exploring many different fields. And ultimately, it was when I joined the MSRP program here at MIT. I joined as someone who even put on the application that I was MD PhD interested. They kind of like sent everyone who was MD PhD interested to the Harvard Medical School campus to kind of talk to people there and paired us with an MD PhD pal. And just through those experiences and kind of like gathering these things and also like shadowing and stuff, I really enjoyed working with patients and interacting with them. But I found myself realizing that whenever I was doing those things, I was always thinking, so when can I get back into lab after this? I really just preferred my time in lab. And I was like, well, if this is how I feel, why am I going to split my time, doing both when I really enjoy and am passionate about doing this more fundamental wet lab research or dry lab research as well. So yeah, that's why I applied to graduate school and why I'm here. I really enjoy research. And in terms of things I want to do in the future, I also currently, for now, I hope to go into academic research.
I guess I'll share my experience. So I went to a really small undergrad in New Orleans, and so we didn't have grad students. So when I was an undergrad, unlike MIT, there was not huge labs with grad students and large research programs. So I really didn't really know what grad school was like. Still don't know exactly how grad school is like, but I decided after I graduated that I was actually going to take a year away from science. So unlike a lot of people, I actually taught elementary school for a year as part of a volunteer program. And I think for me, a huge part of that was needing to take a step away to see if I like really missed it. I had just always gravitated towards science, but it was just like the less logical, like it was just like the next expected step to potentially apply to grad school. So I decided, okay, I'm going to do this volunteer program. I really loved teaching and mentoring, so getting to teach in elementary school was really fun. But about 2 months in, I was like, I miss science a lot, and I think I want to like go back. And so I was able to apply at that point to go to grad school. And even when I applied, I was still like pretty confused about what I was getting myself into. I didn't really know what it was like to be a graduate student at a research, actually at any institution. Like I didn't know what it was like to be a grad student because all of my research experiences were in labs that had only undergrads. And so those are just like fundamentally incredibly different. But yeah, so I think that like how I ended up in grad school feels like kind of a fluke. I wish that I had the ability to go to some of these programs that exposed me or like saw a research institution, but it ultimately came down to I really liked science and I liked asking questions, and it felt like the next kind of logical way to keep on asking more questions. And I have no idea. Well, I've maybe. I think the older you get in grad school, the less you know what you want to do. So I'm currently trying to figure out what I want to do. But academic route has always been an option. I love mentoring students, so that's like what draws me towards that.
Can I add one thing about this going to a small undergrad? I also went to a small undergrad. I was the only active member in the lab. An undergrad with no graduate students on campus, and I was the only active student for 4 years in that lab. So I obviously didn't know what grad students were, what postdocs were. But I think if I had gone straight into graduate school, I think it would have been I would have been able to do it because seeing like when graduate students in a lot of labs join a lab, you pick up on, they teach you a lot of things. And yeah, so So I think I would have been okay if I had gone from like a lab with me to a lab with graduate students and postdocs.
All right, thank you everyone for sharing. We're going to move on to the next question. So our next question is, what was the application process like for you? How did you choose programs that schools to apply to, and why did you choose MIT?
I guess I can go. The process, I would say very demanding because there's so many things to fill out, and like when you're applying to many school is definitely time consuming. But I can say that I was lucky in the sense that I had a lot of people to guide me through the process. And so I did do 3 summers as an undergrad at MIT, and like with that, I met a lot of other grad students and professors. And so when it was time to like apply, it was very easy to find someone to read my statements. And so I was definitely lucky in that sense. And so what was the next? Okay, so what did I choose MIT? Yeah, it sort of like comes down to the fact that because I did do so many summers here, I really felt that I built like a community. I really did meet like great people who loved what they're doing and were also very kind human beings. And so I felt that although that at the end I did, I guess, visit schools that also did have a lot of good people, since I felt that I had some community at MIT, I thought it definitely was the best option for me at the end.
I'll go next. So as far as figuring out what schools, so I did my undergrad at MIT, and here we have academic advisors and our PIs if you're in a lab. And so I met with both of those to kind of figure out where they think I should go. For very outdated reasons, my academic advisor didn't think I should apply to graduate school, so I did not take his advice. And I listened to my PI, Angelica, and she kind of gave me a list of schools that she thought would be a good fit based on my research interests. And so I was like, okay, cool. We'll just see how this short list goes. I applied there. I kind of procrastinate. So I made my graduate student that I worked for, she wanted to review all my essays before I submitted them. So I told her to pick a day so that I'm forced to do them at least the day before that, which is what I ended up doing. And I wrote all my applications then. So I got it. I just got it done pretty quickly. And as you guys know, being undergrads here, you don't go to graduate school here. If you do undergrad here, I actually picked a different institute. Turns out that I made the wrong choice. They weren't particularly supportive of me or my interests, and so I ended up transferring here. And I guess what I've always loved about MIT is everyone is so passionate about what they do, and it feels like home. So.
I can go next and talk about the application process for me. And when I was working as a technician after undergrad and before graduate school, my PI, he encouraged me to apply to graduate schools, and I didn't know where. I didn't really know much, and he just gave me a list of schools, and I just selected a subset of those. And based on where I wanted to live, where I would want to live for the next 4 or 5 years or something, and I ended up deciding on once I got, yeah, I wrote my essays and I gave it to him maybe a few weeks before the deadlines are due, and he told me my essays were too sterile, so I just had to redo the whole thing, and that's just, I guess, I'm just, yeah, an example that it's good to have other people look at it and look at your application essays. And yeah, I ultimately decided on coming to MIT based on location. I was happy with options that I had, and yeah, I just ultimately it came down for me prioritizing being the location and being close to my family.
I can go next. So my answer is pretty similar to Cesar and Bertina in that location. So there are a lot of reasons why I decided to come here. Not only the location and being close to family, there's also like a close airport nearby where I could travel a lot. In pre-pandemic times, I would travel multiple times a year to visit family. But I also participated in the MIT Summer Research Program and developed a community through this program. And I would say my advisor, who I work for now, was Kathy Drennan. I also worked for Jinka Wang, but that was for my first summer. And when I started working for Kathy, it was super helpful because I got to prepare my application while doing research in her lab, and got a lot of feedback from the people in her lab, like the postdocs and other graduate students. And I remember deciding on which schools to apply to and coming up with a list, and it was very safe. Like I had a lot of safe schools, and Kathy was like, no, these are like, you should consider some other schools. And she put on some like top tier schools. And the main reason I didn't think that I was capable of those schools was because of imposter syndrome and just not feeling capable of going to those schools and seeing like my potential. But fortunately I had someone who did see that and like pushed me towards it. And so I interviewed at a lot of places, and it was a close like call, but I ended up coming to MIT because of the community, the support, the location. Also, like it has all of my favorite things. There's a beach not too far away. The public transportation is super cool. The one thing I wish there was more of, but I think there's starting to be more of it, is like an arts culture here. Yeah, so these are all, I guess, my reasons. And oh, those are the questions. Yeah, okay.
So I guess I'll go next. So I am another MSRP alum, as I kind of mentioned, and that definitely was helpful as I was kind of going through the application process and deciding where to apply. So my mentor when I was here for MSRP was Eliezer Calo, and he was so helpful in kind of just letting me know where to apply and how to go about doing it. Also, kind of like Sheena, he kind of told me a bunch of schools that were what I felt I didn't even think they were my league, and he was like, yes, apply to these and let's see how it goes. And so he was helpful for the application process with reading over my personal statement, him and my undergraduate PI as well. I showed it to them and they read over my personal statement. I applied to the schools, and thankfully I got interviews, and it was a fun process. The interview process is definitely fun. I don't think that ever happens again. You're being paid to go to a new place and experience it. And in the end, I chose MIT because I guess it was very close. There was another institution I was very strongly considering. I actually didn't decide on MIT until like the very last day to make a graduate school decision, but ultimately it was the people here, and I guess the people here, the science here, and the culture surrounding the science here that I enjoyed. There was just like an ease, a collaborative ease that I didn't see anywhere else, and I guess a real excitement for like the classes and like just like learning new things even outside of your direct field that I really enjoyed. What was the other question? And yeah, I think these are it, why I chose MIT and how this went.
I can jump in with a non-biology experience. So for the chemistry department, most chemistry departments as of right now, which there's changes that are happening, don't require interviews. So when you come, it's just a visiting weekend, which takes a little bit of the some of the stress off. And so yeah, that's an important kind of difference, that not every single program does interviews. But my experience of applying was, I was working full time as an elementary school teacher, so I didn't have that much like free time to work on these applications. So I ended up actually doing my applications like in a 2-week period right before the deadline, because there's no better time than right before it's due. And that was really stressful. I also wasn't like in the same like physical location of any of the people that I'd worked with in undergrad. So it required a lot of like I was in a different time zone and things like that. So that required a lot of coordination of being able to like talk to people and get that support. And I was really grateful that my advisor in undergrad, who was like a second mom to me, honestly, was like really supportive and really encouraged me to apply to like top research institutions. I didn't think that that was something that I could do to continue the trend. But I really was like encouraged by her. And so ultimately why I chose MIT was I could see myself working for multiple advisors here. So I really wasn't exactly sure what direction I wanted to go in with my research. I had done computational physical chemistry in undergrad, and now I'm in a biochemistry lab, so it's like clearly different. And so I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but I could see that there was multiple groups that I was really interested in working for, and that is kind of what guided my decision, because I didn't want to get to a space where there was like one person that I was really interested in and then find out that we were a bad fit for mentoring styles and things like that.
Yeah, I think the only thing I might add to what other people have shared is just like the value of like being in environments where you're really comfortable. Because there's like lots of great schools, lots of great institutions, lots of awesome departments, but the places, I kind of believe like the places you feel the most comfortable are the ones you're actually going to be the most successful and thrive. And similar to other people, I did MSRP Bio for a couple of summers. And I think just especially meeting faculty actually who like weren't actually the ones I was working with, but like the way that they like treated students from other institutions that were coming to like work around them for the summer, I just thought was amazing. Like they have you take this like an MSRP Bio for a summer, you take this like 1 month methods and logic class, and there's faculty who some of them like aren't running labs, but they will like help run that course. And there's like a particular faculty member, like I was really at my institution, like people never called each other by their like faculty who never addressed by like their first names. And so that like, surprised me here at MIT. And it actually took me like half the summer to get used to. So I'd say like Professor so-and-so and Professor so-and-so. And then I had one of the faculty members who like called me student Kojo until I like learned to stop saying professor like so-and-so. And I was just like, okay, I'll just call you by your first name. And I don't know, it's just like, I just, and that same person is now on my thesis like committee. And they're like, yeah, I don't know. They're just being comfortable around people, I just think makes such a difference in how you thrive. And so I would just encourage you guys, I think I'm hearing in other people's stories, like think about not just names and institutions, which I think are really important, but like where are you comfortable, what's going to help you to thrive. And I think that like helps drive a lot of like success.
Wow, yeah, thank you so much everyone for sharing all those wonderful stories. Our next 2 questions are going to be focused on what your grad school experience has been like so far. So thinking about how it compares to what you expected coming in, as well as things that you've liked, you didn't like, or things you found challenging. So first, let's start with the academic aspects. So things like your research, mentorship, or career development opportunities.
Yeah, I can say that grad school has been hard and fun at the same time. Yeah, I think coming in, I definitely was of the mindset that it was going to be a difficult process. So setting my expectations very low, so that I don't get disappointed, to be honest. And I definitely think thus far it's been a hard experience. I think if someone tells you, "Oh, it's all fun," and yeah, I don't think they're telling the truth because um because I think like I don't know, like with doing scientific research, like the drive is like finding new things, like your projects working out. And that's not always going to be the case, right? And so you're gonna have those weeks where you feel just terrible because like nothing is working. And I guess like coming in, I was like, yes, so I'm gonna have those weeks and that's going to be okay. I'm gonna come out on top. And so that's why it was very, very important for me to find a lab that like could offer me like support when I went through those hard time. And I can definitely say from that aspect, like I am like truly blessed. I think that I am in a great lab with like a great mentor who I can talk to when things are going wrong, um, which helps a lot. I feel. Yeah, and I guess like I guess on the aspect of career development, the biology department does offer a lot of opportunities, I feel, to develop as a scientist, funding you to go to conferences and stuff like that, as well as I mean, like my lab would also funds me to go to conferences. So yeah, so I guess final answer, it's hard, but you come out on top at the end.
I'll go ahead. Um, I think it's been a lot of fun, Bertina. I think my grad school has been a lot of fun. No, I think I got used to failure as an undergrad here. So when things don't work out, I'm not super thrown off by it. Like I expect things to not work the first time. Um, and so I think that was like having been in a lab for 4 years prior to starting grad school as an undergrad, I thought was super helpful to kind of overcome that hump now. But I love doing research. So I'm having a lot of fun trying to troubleshoot things. I am very lucky. My mentor, Kristen, I think is the best person. She's super supportive of all my interests. Always down to talk science, regardless of whether it's directly relevant to my project or not, which is always fun. And for career development, Bertina said the department offers lots of things. Yeah, I think for the most part, I've had fun. You know, failure's part of the job. You just got to work through it.
Yeah, I definitely second that. I think like accepting that you're going to fail along the way is like such a big thing.
Yeah, and I think another thing that I have been working on is setting my pace, not sprinting, but running the marathon. Um, and I think that's just a quality that I have. I'm always very eager to keep going, but I have to recognize the long term sustenance and to be healthy. And I think another um, thing that is just that I've had to balance as well is just um, like social life, not social life, but things with my family and stuff. That's why I decided to stay close to my family because I knew things were gonna come up, and those are just um, balancing academic work and or work with um, yeah, things that come up with your personal life, and doing what you can to balance and stay sane. And I think in terms of development, like career development, I think something else that I do like um, is all of these seminars that happen that are open, that are, I don't know, that you can just learn. Like they offer uh, what do they call them, tutorials to like learn coding and learn a lot of things, and publishing, like ins and outs of publishing, ins and outs of this or that. And hopefully moving forward, a lot of these things that are in these seminars and workshops that are off site can remain virtual, so I can still attend them. But yeah.
I think my experience or like my perspective of grad school really changes depending on what stage of grad school you're in. So the program requirements for chemistry just require that basically everything other than research is done in the first year. So we teach, we TA for 2 semesters, and we take all of our classes in the first year, and then the rest of the time is just dedicated to research. And so I think that like the initial phase of just doing research was like, yes, I get to like work on my research and things like that. And then as I like have developed and spent so much time here, well, it feels like a lot of time, it's not that long. I've really been able to like explore other things. So I've been able to mentor, I've been able to be a MSRP bio pal, right? I didn't get to participate in MSRP, but I got to help out in that sense. And so things like that. So I think that grad school has been hard, and I think there's been moments that have been harder than others. But I also think that like the reason why it's been fun for me is the community people that I've found. So I think a huge part of it is like the lab, like Bertina has mentioned, is like the lab environment of this idea of like, do you have people around you that like when things are not going great, whether it's like in research or actually just life, because life will still happen while you're in grad school, as Cesar has just mentioned. Do you have people that are like going to support you through that? And that makes grad school fun and exciting and enjoyable, because to continually deal with failure is not fun, even if you set yourself up for that, where you're like, it's never going to work, but then it's like kind of sad after like 4 years of it not working. But when I have people in my lab that are willing to troubleshoot with me, or people in my lab that are willing to let me like rant about why my experiment's not working for the like 50th time, it's really, really makes it a space that I want to be, and a space that I feel like celebrated and valued. And I think that has made my grad school experience feel worthwhile and meaningful, and is the reason why I would want to continue in academia. It's the people that are doing really great things, and like the environments that we create. So it was definitely not what I expected, because I didn't really even know what to expect. But I think that like the people in my undergrad experience were always the most important part of what I'm doing. And I think once again, Sheena and I will talk about the Drennan Lab for days, about what that looks like and like how much of a community it is. So.
Yeah, I can jump in and piggyback on what Francesca said, in that the community in our lab is super great. And going off of failure, someone told me that when you're in grad school, 90% of your experiments won't work and 10% will. And being in a very supportive, fun lab helps with those 90% of the experiments not working. So I really appreciate that. What I also liked is that MIT specifically teaches you how to think and problem solve. And that was something that I didn't get exposed to as much, like through my K through 12 studies and my undergrad studies. And so I really appreciated that about being here. And yeah, I enjoy mentoring and teaching, and our not first year curriculum, our biology department requires at least 2 semesters of teaching. And what I also like about the department is that it spreads out the requirements. So our first year we're in classes, and then we do rotations, and then we teach our second and fourth year. So it's not all together like in the chemistry department. But I think as you all are deciding on which programs you want to be in, something like that may attract you versus something else. But that was something that attracted me to our department. And what else? There was something else I wanted to say, but it has been hard, especially the first year curriculum. I had to get a tutor for biochemistry, and I majored in biochemistry, and I had to take undergrad genetics. So I will not lie and say that it's been an easy road. It's definitely been hard, but I think it gets better the more you get used to it and understand like how to navigate the system.
So I guess to add to that, I definitely, I guess having been here in MSRP, I was warned and told and expected the classes to be very, very hard, harder than anything I had been exposed to going to my undergraduate institution. And I guess with the research, I had been told maybe not in the context of the very neat project I was able to do in like the 9 weeks that I was here for MSRP, where there were some troubleshootings and some failures, but in the end, everything kind of had a nice conclusion within a short time frame. I was told by some other grad students in the lab and people in my undergrad lab that that was definitely not typical. And like even undergrad research project, like I feel like you don't get a true sense of what it is to have a graduate research project until you step in and you're like, oh, the direction I go and what I do with this project is all on me. And the only one who suffers from your own failures is you. So it's kind of like you being the new arbitrator of what is success and what isn't, and when you want to hit these success milestones is a little bit of like a frame shift in mentality versus being like having a mentor or a grad student next to you telling you you did good, or like a class that gives you a certain grade after you hit a certain checkpoint and you're like, yes, you just have to like, you do something, and if it works that means there's more to do. And I've come to enjoy, I really enjoy that process. That's why I'm in grad school. I expected this coming in, and thankfully I enjoy it. But I do think that's something to consider if you have only done undergraduate research. Community-wise, support-wise, I think it's been great. My time in MSRP has been, the vibe I felt that MIT and the department I had in MSRP has only been confirmed. In my time as a grad student, I'm part of the Radine Lab, and I've felt nothing but supportive. Peter's super great, and I still talk to Eliezer, my old mentor from MSRP, and he's also super great. So yeah, I think community-wise, support-wise, it's great. And research-wise, career development-wise, there are resources you can take. And yeah, it's been hard, but that's to be expected, I guess. And ultimately, if you like what you're doing, it's gonna be worth it. So
Okay, since I think everyone answered the last question, we're going to move on to our final question, which is that, in your opinion, what is the role of diversity in science? It'd be fantastic if you guys would be able to share any specific examples that you've encountered in your work. And if you're an underrepresented minority, how has being underrepresented played into your grad school experience? And feel free to expand on your life outside of academics as a whole, social community support system, just in general.
Yeah, I can kick us off, but I feel like diversity is just super important because like I'm not sure there's another really healthy way to like learn and like to be encouraged. So I went to, like I mentioned, I went to University of Maryland, Baltimore County, and before I came into college, my only thought in my mind about what I wanted to do in my future was like, I want to play soccer professionally. And my dad was like, you're not that good. It's not going to work out. And then I went to college at UMBC and I met lots of other underrepresented minorities. And there was just like a culture at our school where like I distinctly remember it, like seeing and thinking like if you see like a large crowd of Black males at UMBC walking from a class, it's more likely to be like the biochemistry people sitting from like the front row of my class than like the basketball team. And not that one's like better or worse than the other, but just the picture of what to expect of yourself. I didn't college like really was like transformative for me in thinking about like what people's like potential could be from all like different backgrounds and groups. And so I think diversity is just really important because it helps to like encourage you, and especially when you get discouraged. Like I also, like I know someone else mentioned, I like failed one of my classes my first year of grad school. That was like the one thing I was kind of like counseled to try not to do like coming in, but I like failed one of my classes, and I remember thinking, like, there aren't many other Black men. I hope they don't like not let anyone else in because of my failure. And that's what like where my mind was. And so just like I think it's just really important to have diversity that's expressed in representation, because it does a lot to people's like minds and psyche. And the other thing I would just mention is I like I've loved my lab because I feel like it's been like age diverse. Like you know, there's people who've been staff scientists for 10 years. There are like undergraduates. There are people who are from other countries and speak different languages. Like people who are like in different graduate programs, like at MIT, that have come and worked in our lab. And you don't even know the things you don't know until you're learning from other people. And so I just kind of feel like there's not another way to actually like grow as a human being without being exposed to people who come from different backgrounds.
Okay, sorry, Cesar. Okay, so I guess I'll come in. My undergrad institution was Florida International University, which is a minority majority institution. I would say the majority of students in that school were Hispanic. The second largest demographic was Black students, and then Asian and white students were in the minority, which is odd to see compared to like the top tier institutions. It was kind of like an inverse of that. But in that same respect, many of my professors were Hispanic or Black and had come from different backgrounds or had certain accents that was normal to me. This is what I expected of an academic professor, and it was what I considered normal. So when I came into MIT for the first time, I remember they kind of gave us a sort of like diversity seminar, and they kind of like showed us a picture of a Black man. And they were like, you know, you see him as your professor, what do you do? And I'm like, oh, you know, I had a professor like that. I don't know what you mean. So it was eye-opening to realize how much of a rarity what I experienced in undergrad was outside of that sort of demographic, and how invaluable it was even in labs. So I remember kind of doing research and kind of interacting with the members of my lab in undergrad and being exposed to perspectives and like, I guess, very much money saving, resourceful perspectives that I realize are not really considered here at MIT. And sometimes, you know, they pay off. They're tricks and things that I've kept and continue to do even now that I'm at MIT, and things that you probably would not have considered if that wasn't something you had to do, I guess, by virtue because of like your circumstances, not having a lot of funding for research. A lot of people in my lab had done their schooling in like Brazil or Latin America. And so I guess saving things was a big thing. I guess pretty much what I'm trying to say is realizing that anyone can do anything if they have the support and the means of doing it, and just realizing the different ways people can do so, even when it's much harder for them to do it than others, has been something that I'm very happy to have been able to experience as like the norm, I guess, in undergrad and beforehand.
I can keep it short and just reiterate the importance of having, I guess, a learning community of students and instructors that have a lot of experiences and understandings of humanity is very welcoming. I went to a undergrad institution uh, that was vastly, predominantly very elite, uh, 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 elite student body that went to boarding school, private schools, and everything. And I came from a high school, public high school, so motivated to go to college, but then I got hit by a wall of another world, and I felt so out of place. And that's I fortunately I created a home for myself in the lab, but it was very discouraging, very uncomfortable, and very stressful, more stress than it needed to be. But I think like having a lot of experiences and ways of like um, dealing with challenges outside of academia helps a group solve a lot of problems and troubleshooting in a research lab. And so I think I don't know, people would, yeah, I've had to figure out a lot of things with my family, like before coming to like academia or outside of academia. And I think like having that sort of mentality helps like to troubleshoot experiments and like looking at a problem from a lot of different angles. I think the more diversity of experiences, definitely the better in solving any sort of difficult challenge.
Yeah, so I'd have to hear it. So I guess the comment again is like diversity, I feel like makes the learning experience so much better. I feel like being like interacting with people from like different backgrounds. Like I feel like first that improves your science as well as you as a human being, because it's true, I feel like at the end of the day we have our own biases, and I think that being able to like interact with other people that look different, that think different, I think uh should always be a plus and should always be encouraged at institution. I guess like sort of like what Kojo was saying, like when you have that lack of diversity of like a particular group, right? So like someone's come in and they don't see anyone that look like them. I think that it's true, like the pressure, I think like to succeed is very real, and like any failure is like so instrumental in that, yeah, they feel like, okay, I am like representing like this whole group, this whole country, or like it could be something like that. Yeah, and I think that, yeah, diversity is like very, very important and very important to like the scientific community in general, and should be promoted and encouraged always.
Okay, I know we're almost quite out of time, but we wanted to move in to let the audience have a chance to ask questions. Michael asked a question. I see that Sheena already answered it, but I want to open up to the panelists if anyone wants to add to it. So how do you view taking the GRE if schools don't require it?
Well, I don't know. I feel like if you want to take it, you should just take it. Um, yeah, I mean, I'm not sure, because like the GRE, like for me, I don't know. I didn't enjoy taking it because it's definitely expensive. And so like thinking about that, and also like fees for the application, it I definitely felt it at the end. And so I guess like that was sort of like my reasoning as to why I would personally be against taking it. But yeah, I think it's a personal choice at the end. Like if someone, yeah, wants to take it, they should.
If I were to apply to schools, only schools that didn't require the GRE, I wouldn't take it. But that's just me.
Yeah, if I would have had to pay for it, I don't think I would have taken it, but the McNair program paid for it for me and required me to take it, so I took it. And they paid for the prep materials too, so that was nice. But if you're in a position where you're the one that has to finance it and the prep, and you don't have to take it to where you're applying, then I guess it becomes more of a personal choice of how much you feel that's gonna strengthen your application.
Shout out to public libraries. They have a lot of prepping material. I never paid for, yeah, prep material.
Yeah, so I think it's 5 o'clock. So thank you everyone for coming, and also thank you to all the grad students for taking the time to um, share with us your experiences and give a lot of really good advice. And as I put it in the chat, if any of the attendees want to talk to any specific panelist or just have any more general questions, feel free to email the mailing list that I put in the chat, which is, it has Lena, Lily, and I, so we can connect you to any of the grad students. Yeah, so have a great weekend. Thanks for coming.